morning, viewers. It's pleasure to have another session of the CX Chat Show. Today, we have Sachin amongst us. Sachin Bhatia is the co-founder and head of global sales and marketing for Ameyo, a computer scientist by education and a product person at heart. Sachin has been involved in understanding the needs and delivering customer engagement solutions to consumer facing organizations. He has been working with CIOs, customer experience leaders, and innovators in over 60 countries over the last 16 years and believes problems in emerging markets needs unique solution. Sachin, it's absolute pleasure to have you a part of the CX Chat Show. Welcome to the show. Before we start or go deep dive into the session, I would like to have a small ice-breaking session for our audience as well. Apart from donning the hat of co-founder, heading the global sales for Ameyo, what are your hobbies? What are your passions? A little bit a liner or two on that note, Sachin.
Sure, sure. And Sarfaraz, thank you so much, and hello to all the viewers. So as an individual, I believe that there is a child in all of us, and you have to continuously keep quenching the curiosity of that child to stay alive. So one of my passions is to keep picking up new hobbies. So there's not one hobby. Every year I will pick up one hobby, whether it's a musical instrument or photography or gardening, or for that matter, more recently with my 10-year-old gaming. So I would pick up one hobby, get like above average in it, and then get bored and pick up another hobby. But continuous learning and something to sort of keep me simulated. Apart from those hobbies which are sort of refreshing, I also like doing a little bit of reading, whether it's online or books. So those two, apart from my two kids, sort of take away whatever time I have apart from my professional role.
Sachin, before we dig deep into the session, a quick intro about yourself is already done. Why not another quick two-liners about what Ameyo does? I would like to hear from you, and I'm sure the audience would also like to hear from you.
Hey, thanks, Sarfaraz. So the word Ameyo actually means boundless. It's a Sanskrit word Ame, which means ocean. And Ameyo does everything that a business to consumer organization requires in terms of engagement. So very specifically, the three processes of onboarding or sales, customer service, collections, and you want to run these processes across any of the channels. So whether it's voice, chat, email, social media, WhatsApp, Instagram more recently, and we have also launched video now. Any of these channels, if you want to sort of amalgamate and deliver, sales service collections process, that's what Ameyo do. Most of our customers are B2C companies, and we have served customers in about 21 verticals in 60 countries, whether it's Africa, Middle East. Closer to Africa, closer to our audience here. I think top insurance companies, both in Kenya, Nigeria, banks. Some of them would be at the event that we are talking about. All of them are our customers for quite some time now, and looking forward to meeting them at the event.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sachin. Thanks for that quick intro about Ameyo. So let's move forward. Fantastic. Great to hear. How old are your kids?
One is 10, another one is 9.
I'm sure it's going to be very, very tiring at home, and that too with the lockdowns going on.
My elder one has autism, and he has so much energy that I have to take him for a drive twice a day, because they have to sort of let out their energy. He's non-verbal. But yeah, it is new learning. Every time life throws a challenge at you, you figure out what's the best solution to it, get to it, and get it over with.
Now that you're talking about challenges, I just wanted to check with you. Ameyo as an organization has probably been doing business or present in 60 or more than 60 countries. And I'm sure as part of your daily routine, daily activities, you have been engaging with CIOs or the CX level set of people. Now, tell me about the top 3 challenges that you have been hearing from the market that clients have been facing when it comes to delivering a seamless customer experience during this ongoing COVID crisis, Sachin.
You made a very interesting point, Sarfaraz. In fact, after the pandemic, we guys realized that it's more important for us now to engage with our customers because this is not business as usual, especially in our industry, the contact center customer engagement industry. So before I get to the challenges, there are two trends that we observe. The first is uh, there is tremendous cost pressure on these functions, right? As the first knee-jerk reaction, everybody realized that conserving cash is going to be important, and the service function seems to be the first ones that people are saying, okay, tell us where we can save costs, which I think is a very natural reaction. The second that we are realizing is that, in fact, just to deliver a seamless experience or even a business as usual experience that people had, and experience has a lot of components, right? There are physical components, there is engagement, there is actually product experience. The uncertainty with whether we can actually do something is a big problem, right? If you give a certain situation to a business leaders, they will come out with a solution to that. But uncertainty perhaps is the biggest problem that people are facing. So for example, a simple question like, the first reaction that people had was, obviously we need to go remote, right? Now, how long do we need to stay remote? That question is such an uncertain question. Now, a lot of good has come out of that question, and we'll talk about that. But I'm giving you one example of uncertainty. Another example of uncertainty: people can't travel. So, how do you make sure that infrastructure is available at uh, agent's home to deliver what they were doing in a contact center kind of function? So if you look at top three challenges, if you have to sort of distill them into top three, I think the first challenge that we have observed is around the infrastructure and availability, which means you see, contact center is a very tech enabled business, right? Or tech enabled function. Now, for the first few weeks, agents didn't even have laptops at home, right? And then the broadband was a problem. Now, in an office environment, everything is governed very closely with IT. But in a home environment, how do you replicate the same amount of trust in the infrastructure? So that's the first challenge that we observed. The second challenge is contact center is also a very operations heavy function, and on a floor, you and I would have seen, on a floor, if I am a team leader or a supervisor, I can just walk up to a guy, do a buddy jacking, listen to his call, give him a feedback in a one-on-one session in next 15 minutes. How do you make sure that such operational governance now can happen where agent is logged in from anywhere and supervisor is logged in from somewhere else? So the buzz on the floor is not the motivation anymore, which means that you need to have very specific monitoring, very specific triggers to identify what is going wrong. So that's the second challenge we observed. And the third challenge is this tremendous pressure that is coming from the management on the CX functions. That how do you bring down the cost, right? These three seems to be the overarching concerns that we are hearing. There are some ancillary concerns around security, customer data, but I think those all will be part of the IT governance part. But IT governance, operational governance, and monitoring, and then the cost pressures seem to be the three most heard problems that we are hearing from our customers.
Okay, great. Now, we talked about IT governance, we talked about operational, and of course, cost being a major concern. And almost most of the organizations have been very conservative in when it comes to adoption of new technologies or implementing new technologies. Now, as a person who has been innovative technology, has been in this business for almost like 15 plus years, what has been your recommendations to your clients, to your prospects, in addressing these challenges and how they can overcome these problems, Sachin?
Sure. So the three challenges that I mentioned are from the perspective of they were immediately visible as soon as the pandemic happened. But there are a few other observations that we have made over time, and this is coming from understanding the engagement and the analysis of interactions that is happening. we are all obsessed with the word social distancing right now, right? And I would like to rephrase it as physical distancing and not social distancing. One of the things that we have to realize, and I can talk to you as a human being, uh, are you more in touch with your friends or less in touch with your friends after COVID? Now, there might be a variation, but what we have learned is that uh, there is actually more engagement, human to human engagement happening virtually right now. Now, if you transpose that to organization, right? Do you think organizations and consumers will talk more or less in COVID times? And we have understood that the importance of human to human engagement has actually gone multifold, right? So because there is anxiety, there is uncertainty, whether my order is going to come or not. There are a lot of uncertainties. To address this anxiety, the only answer is engagement. So the need for human to human engagement will actually increase, which is very contra to the point of how do you reduce cost if the engagement need is increasing. So the first point that I want to make, and the recommendation is, contact centers are actually going to come at the center stage of driving sales, customer service, and collections. They were considered a service function, right? So there was a field sales, there were branches, there were physical presence. All that is not accessible anymore. So the role of the contact center is actually going to increase manifold in driving some of those functions. And hence, to look at that as a functional cost would be a wrong and a very micro view. People will have to say, what's my 2-year, 3-year, 5-year outlook of making contact center a central function and getting some of those ancillary functions more measurable. So that's my first recommendation, that the need for human to human engagement is actually going to increase, and hence bring the contact center into the center stage. Stop thinking, and this is a cliched, right? Stop thinking of it as a cost center. Time is now to actually start thinking, how do you drive sales, onboarding? And there are ample examples now. Complete onboarding. We were talking to a customer called Muthoot. I was interviewing them yesterday, and they have been able to reduce their customer onboarding time from 1 hour to 15 minutes through the contact center, which used to be a branch or a physical visit earlier, right? So one will have to not think of business as usual processes, but completely disrupt processes. That how could you run it from the contact center? So that's my first recommendation. My second recommendation, and this is coming from a little bit of maths, so bear with me, right? In most of the emerging geographies, and we work with mostly emerging geographies, right? Southeast Asia, Middle East, Africa. If we look at the contact center people cost, right, or the agent cost, and we compare it to the infrastructure cost of the contact center, which means if you're spending, let's say, $200 on an agent per month, how much are you spending per month on infrastructure? You'll be surprised that that number is about 25-30%, right? And what's the typical gross margin of these functions? It's about 15-20% overall, right? So a simple maths that if, and I'm saying it's a big if, but if you're able to completely go away, let go of the infrastructure, that's 12.5% of gross margin, which means you can double your margin if you are able to run this successfully remote. And I believe that leaders who are able to transform their contact centers to completely remote, and it's not going to be easy, they will actually be winners out of the pandemic, because they will actually be working on double the margins and would have learned how to run this remote. You will be surprised what all would this change. So the kind of agents that you would hire, you could hire them anywhere. You now have skill available. They will usually be self-motivated, goal-driven people, and not supervised and micromanaged agents. So a lot is going to change in terms of culture. Uh, so it's time to go back to the drawing board and start doing those experiments, right? That how do I say, pandemic or no pandemic, we are going to run remote over the next 12 months completely, right? There are other concerns around regulatory, and I think governments have been very fast in responding, because citizen security is important for them. But businesses have to wake up and say, I cannot wait for get this to become normal. This is normal, and I have to come out stronger out of this. So those would be my two recommendations, Sarfaraz.
Fantastic. I mean, I'm sure that those are great suggestions and recommendations to the community out there, Sachin. Now, we have been reading so many articles in various medias that digital transformation in organizations have really, really fast forwarded. And this has been, we have been witnessing almost 80 plus, or I would say 90% of workforce of most of the organizations have started working remotely. And to this extent, the customer experience or the customer service departments are no exceptions as well, Sachin. So, what do you think are the key check boxes which you feel that the heads of customer experience or the head of customer service departments need to have on their strategy of remote customer support?
So as I pointed out, Sarfaraz, I think remote, especially in the contact center space, is gonna be the new normal, and not just because it is needed today. It's gonna stay for a very very long time, given the unit economics that I mentioned. Uh, I think there are few things that the leaders will have to understand, which will be very different from what it is today. We'll have to be very sensitive about if an agent is in a work from home environment, is he facilitated with the right infrastructure? How do you build a culture of the team, culture of that organization? Because those things required extreme strong physical grouping. So I foresee hybrid models coming out wherein you would have hurdles, let's say once a week or once a fortnight or once a month, and then basically team activities jointly. So office would have a very different connotation. It would be a fun place where people come to learn, engage, belong to the tribe, and then they go back to their places and work. uh, so that's one thing, that how do you run sort of uh, how do you still create that culture, how do you onboard new people? More things will need to be documented and processized, Sarfraz. So a lot of things are what we call as tribal knowledge, right? The tribal knowledge, I tell you, you tell somebody, and that's how it propagates. I think a lot of those things will have to be institutionalized, documented in onboarding, that this is what right, this is what is wrong, this is what our company stands for, so that somebody has a ready reckoner, a reference of what is it that I need to do in a certain situation, because he might not have somebody sitting next door and ask him, hey buddy, so what do you do, right? uh, so so I think the culture part is as I view it right now, digital transformation, the pace at which it is happening, will also have to address how would you handle institutionalization of culture and onboarding and processization of these things. The other things are, I mentioned some of them earlier. I think making sure that the agent's infrastructure, you can trust it, right? So I'll give you a very small example without inferring anything, but you will see where I'm going. So let's say that the agent is saying that I'm not able to log in. Okay, in an office environment, it's a very simple problem. You report to IT. IT comes to the desk, checks, and things are okay. Here, what do? Do you trust the network? Do you trust the device? Do you trust the agent? Right? How do you figure it out? Now, some of those things will require different kind of monitoring, different kind of processes, so that you are able to, you have intelligence on the device, intelligence on the network. You can't control it, but you should be able to get a flag that this is the problem, so that there is trust in it, right? We have observed this might sound very trivial, but this is going to be a huge differentiator in how you look at contact. Can you trust what is being said at face value? Can you validate it with intelligence, with data, right? So importance of data is going to go, it's already very important, but in remote, I think it's going to go like manifold. So those are some of the things that people are possibly, it's at the back burner right now. How do I build culture? How do I onboard new people? How do I trust what is being said? What's governance? What is the process? Some of these things will take the center stage in next 2 to 3 quarters, as we get away from that. We have gone remote. Now it's a question of, can we improve on remote, right? So that is when these things will be highlighted. it's better that we think about these things right now.
Fantastic. Sachin, during these pandemic times, we have already seen lot of changes coming in the customer support or in the customer service functionality. As customers, we ourselves, we have been witness to those changes. Now, what we have seen and witnessed is a tremendous increase in conversational AI, chatbots, and all the technologies which has been interlinked to AI and RPS, which happens in the backend. Now, do you think this is going to be new normal going forward, Sachin?
Great question, Sir Faraz. So, I'll answer it by two things. First of all, let's look at channels, right? Customer service or any sort of customer engagement, it starts with the channel, right? Whether it's a physical branch visit, or a phone call, or a chat, or a text. Now, one trend is very clear that text-based mediums are preferred by the younger generation, right? So younger consumers, they like multitasking, so they would prefer if they can just type and do their stuff and reply back. So the text medium was anyways a popular medium in the younger population. Uh, Another thing that is changing is because there is no physical. So I'll give you some examples. Let's say you were a retail grocery, right? Now the government is allowing you to deliver, but how do you take orders? So can you now put a simple bot which can show you what is there and in a conversational manner collect your order information. Uh, some of the use cases will be accelerated on bots, whether it's voice bot, chat bot, because they cannot be done physically now, and it's not worth putting a human being because they can be automated. The fear is that people are thinking of this as a magic wand, that here is a 1000 seater contact center and here is my bot, and now bot can do work of. I just said a while back that the importance of human to human engagement is actually going to increase. A
True.
bot cannot address anxiety. A bot definitely cannot address anger, disappointment, right? So you need a human being on the other side. A bot can possibly help reduce some of the data collection, some of the answers, simple inquiries that otherwise you had to find on a website. You can actually ask someone in natural language, hey, what's my account balance? Somebody will tell it. How do I open a new policy? Somebody can say, here are a few inputs. Would you like to open a policy now? And as soon as the first, but why do you guys want this? There's a human being who has to come and answer that question when there is doubt, when there is trust. So any sort of those things will have to be addressed by the human being. So bots are here to stay. There is no denying that. I think 7, 8, 9% interactions today can easily be. And when I'm saying easily means they are obvious candidates. It still requires a lot of work in designing the journey, and this would get accelerated by channels like WhatsApp, right? So WhatsApp is such a popular medium, such an engaged channel that when we see the icon of the company, and let's say I get a notification for a collections reminder, and I start interacting that, hey man, I have paid, and the bot can actually say, okay, we have noted it down, we'll let you know, and there was actually an engagement without a human being. But let's say I want to say, hey man, in today's time, I don't think I'll be able to pay in full. Bot is not the medium that you would want to put in. There is anxiety, there is fear. As soon as we are sorry to hear that, let me get a human being to talk to you, right? And the human will say, okay, so can we, do the replanning? I'm talking about a collections use case. So this seamless journey of you optimizing, bot is optimization for the customer. He always wants to talk to a human being. His preference, none of us love talking to a bot, right? Not even
True.
like. I'll wait for a customer service agent for another 10 minutes if I have to, rather than trying to haggle with the bot, at least today. But if I can be given information quickly, the bot can do that faster than a human being. So you will see these hybrid models coming up. It also serves well that Don't try and automate everything. That's not going to be a reality. Take one function, one channel, and start automating 3%, 4%. Get feedback, stitch that journey to the human being, and that is how you implement bots. So yes, there is a very, very high interest. I think there are use cases which are obvious for bots today, but uh, for a foreseeable time in future, I see bots and humans working together in trying to optimize cost and the emotional connect in the engagement.
Fantastic. That's a lot of insights that you have been sharing, and totally agree with you. We love to interact with humans, no matter how savvy or how friendly or how sweetly the bot might sound. We still prefer having a human touch, and that's where we feel good about the whole conversation at all. Totally agree on that. Before we end this session, one last question, Sachin. Has customer experience changed with remote workforce or remote contact centers operating, Sachin? Do you see there is a change in that? If so, how do you see that?
Definitely, there's a huge change, right? We talked about some of these points, but I am very sure about one thing, Sarfaraz. Organizations who will focus on designing a great customer experience now, and I'm talking irrespective of cost. If you're able to reduce costs, great. If you're able to uh, move to different channels, great. If you're able to automate, again, great. But folks who are able to serve their customers and earn their trust in these times, uh, that is gonna stay in customers' mind for a very, very long time. So the challenge for the leaders is gonna be how do you balance between what is relevant, what is really needed, because everybody is doing what is really needed, right?
Correct.
Everybody focusing on what is really needed. So how do you augment what is really needed with what would change in the next 1, 2, 3 quarters, and augment a strategy which is delivering great experience to the end customer. The second big shift that people will have to sort of catches, this is the new normal. Remote is going to be the way to go because of the unit economics. There is no way to go back to 100% uh, especially in the contact center function, and hence the kind of people who will be serving, the kind of skill and talent that is available now is changing dramatically. Start experimenting around those. Don't just strategize, but start experimenting. Can we hire an agent who can work from home, is great skill, but is actually, I'll give you an example. In US, we saw in inside sales, you can actually hire retired army professionals or housewives who can spend, let's say, 3 hours, but they are really educated and there is good skill available. Now, as a leader, this is an opportunity for me because the processes are being set. Why do I have a set pattern of what do I hire? I should hire the best talent available and see what is it that they require. Somebody might want to stay at home near their parents, but is greatly skilled. Can I use that leverage? He'll be super motivated. So your motivation cannot be with a stick only. These are some of the things that if people are able to, leaders who will pick these trends, I think they will go very, very far in differentiating themselves from what business as usual companies will continue to do.
Fantastic, fantastic. Now, this is for our audience, especially from the African region. Sachin would also be part of the upcoming CX Transformation Virtual Summit, which we would be putting together on the 28th and the 29th of July. For all our viewers and audience, I would request you to join us on those days and hear Sachin speaking on our contact centers relevant as CX transform in post-COVID era. And that's going to be a real I would say a thought-provoking conversation which Sachin is going to be leading on. And that's an invite from Phoenix Business Intelligence and from the CX Chat Show as well. So that is something which I wanted to share with the audience. Before we end this conversation, Sachin, any two pointers, anything which you say that these are probably your two pointers that CX leaders and innovators or probably technology experts need to keep in mind during these pandemic times and continue delivering seamless customer experience?
Yeah, I think my first point, I've mentioned it a while back also, but the first point would be do small experiments. This is the time to conduct a few experiments, whether it's how you hire, how you run, what channels you serve, do you automate or not, and get data around what you know. Instead of having a gut feel or a fear of missing out, everybody's doing it, and hence I have to do it. Do small experiments around some of these things and make them measurable. Get people to rally behind those experiments, and once you have success in that experiment, scale it, right? Like the agile principles or the lean startup principles. It's time that everybody thinks like a startup and sort of disrupts themselves on how they're doing. Second, and I can't emphasize this enough, I think it's repetition, but I think it requires it. Human to human engagement is more important than ever. Be empathetic towards your customers, towards your employees. I know there might be rationals of business that will drive some of the decisions, but the human to human engagement is more important than ever. Over communicate if you have to, but don't under communicate.
Fantastic. Just wanted to stress on one point which you had mentioned about be empathetic to your customers. And this was the point which has been repeatedly being stressed by most of our previous guests, be it Seema D'Souza, Director for Customer Experience for NCBA, or Hussein Dajani from Nissan, and almost every other guest stressed out this point. Be empathetic, not the time to sell, understand the pain points of your customers, what they're going through, and engage them in human conversation. So, on that note, I would like to end this chat show. It was absolute pleasure and honor to have you, Sachin. Look forward to have you end of this month on the CX Transformation Virtual Summit as well. Thank you for your time and lovely having you.
Thanks, Sarfaraz, and everybody stay healthy, keep smiling, and I'll see you on the virtual summit. See ya. Bye.
Thank you. Pleasure. Take care. Stay safe.